Hey, what's up? Well, another thing I want to talk about in this video, let's see. I could actually have these come out on different days, but yeah, I just want to talk about how just more of the same about how, I would like to say that I'll be going to my mom's house. Um I would like to be going there, but unfortunately, I may end up spending my first Christmas away from her and with my dad. And while I'm not going to enjoy that, it'll be a very different experience. And I just want to say that I'm just really just knocking myself out. I wish I could have had that 20 years ago. Custom country songs and custom Christmas songs and custom country Christmas songs. So I'll just probably be releasing those over the next month or however long. Um, I've just really enjoyed making and releasing those songs. And just really want to put that out there. And I'm glad the weather is finally colder. But unfortunately, we have entered the only time of year when I really have to worry about getting a cold. Since I've pretty much gotten to the point where outside of a brief window from October to about, I want to say March, like I really, I want to say February has become about the latest that I tend to get respiratory viruses as an adult. And, it's just like, it's the weirdest thing. It's like not only have the number decreased in colds, but also the window of time, the period of time when I'm susceptible has also decreased throughout my lifespan. To the point where it's like, and like I said, I mean, this is not something you can know after just 1 year. It's something that takes many years of adulthood to look back upon it and say, oh, yeah, the colds are not there anymore. You see, because when it first starts happening, the first few years, it's like you honestly think it's a fluke. Like you honestly aren't sure, whether it's just that you've gotten lucky, which unfortunately, I think too many people end up having kids because they honestly, they are so stupid and ignorant. Like no one has ever, well, I mean, it's amazing just in the scope of time, just how briefly, just how soon ago it was that we even realized that colds were caused by viruses. I mean, before the 1950s, that really was not widely known. It was really only known among scientists. And because they didn't have the internet, information didn't spread as quickly. I mean, think about it. You still had people that were truly illiterate, um, didn't know how to read, and were not required to learn. And so people really and truly, a lot of the knowledge that people had, even, when things did become known, was still passed down from the generations. So if for hundreds of years, people thought of a cold, it's just something that happened because you went outside when it was cold, no matter who you were. Then people still treated them, well, I mean, to this day, I mean, they still swear by the idea that it's going to make you more susceptible. Even if it can't actually give you a virus to which you are not exposed, it's still going to make you more susceptible. And I mean, certainly everybody has some exposure. But so people still treated them, just like they had, 1950 was a lot more like 1900 than it was like 2000, and then 2000 is like 2050 and so on. The changes have happened much more rapidly since technology took over. I mean, think about it. It's just so amazing. It's like I feel just so grateful to be living in such an amazing period of time. Wherein on the very same MP3 player from around 2008, which is already outdated then, It's like I can go from one custom made song that I made with this tear jerkingly amazing technology that is AI. And notice how the only two vowels in magic are AI. And that's not a coincidence. And so here I have this custom country song that's beautiful. But then the very next track, I skip forward and, it just happens to be a song made, say 20, 30 years, or has to be at least 30 years ago, like in the early 90s, I guess. Maybe the late 80s, I don't know. So a 35-year-old song by Garth Brooks calling Baton Rouge one of the only two capitals that I've ever visited, the other one being Austin. Um, he's calling Baton Rouge from a payphone, and it's just all about a payphone. And so it's an equally beautiful melody. Has all the same instruments that I like to put in my custom country songs. The fiddle, the steel guitar, the drums, electric guitars. All the same instruments, all the same flavor of what I love in music, country music. Very passionate, emotional voice. Hitting the right notes, not a rap song where they don't have any notes at all. So it's the same style, the same genre, but yet it couldn't be more different. And it's just mind blowing how you can have like this one song that's from the late 80s or the early 1990s by Garth Brooks calling Baton Rouge, and it's about a man pulling over to call this woman named Samantha on a payphone, and he's just so excited, to pull over every time he pulls over because that's what he's going to go do. But yet, right next to it on the same MP3 player that is itself, at least 16 years old, it has a song that was custom made on a phone, the very device that made payphones obsolete. Is that amazing or what? You go from the days of payphones and just a very basic, simplistic world that was the 80s and even on into the 90s. And within my very same lifetime, and also the lifetime of Garth Brooks, the singer, Garth Brooks is still alive. And yet, we don't have payphones anymore, but what replaced it is something that can literally create from scratch a custom country song. And it not only, eliminates the need for payphones, but also the very instruments in the song. Oh my gosh, it's just so profound that I can't hardly put it into words. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting time to be living in. But back to what I was saying about colds, it's like, think about it. Less than 50 years ago, people, there are people on this earth who genuinely had no clue what a virus was. And if they weren't well educated, it probably just went in one ear and out the other. People weren't really, they understood germs to an extent. They understood, I guess some things, like dysentery and things that were caused by unsanitary conditions, but they didn't fully understand viruses and, the nature of colds and what really causes them. And so they genuinely believed, colds were from going outside when it was cold. And, they didn't understand the connection to being around people, and particularly children, because they have more of them. And so, a lot of people unfortunately have kids because by the time that they it's like they don't ever get far enough into their adult years like I did before. Like, I'm 41 years old, and so I've basically been legally an adult for what, 23 years? Oh my gosh, 23 years. I've been over 21 for 20 years. So 2 solid decades of my life, now over half of my life, I've been old enough to vote. And so I've been an adult for long enough to really look back upon my life and see trends that people just don't see. By the age of, say, 20 or 21 or 25 or so on. It takes a while. And that's why men are not attracted to women my age, even if we could maintain our youthful appearance, because we do have too much life experience behind us to really view them the same way that we did when we were younger. It's a lot easier to pass yourself off as being amazing or, a savior and wonderful and strong, you know, to someone who doesn't fully grasp the fact that muscles are, they're just something that you have to keep up, you know. That clean cut guy with the big muscles will not stay that way if he quits cutting his hair and going to the gym. And injury could actually do that to him. And so, when you don't have much life experience, the combination of ignorance and just failing to consider certain things that you do as you get older, that makes younger women more attractive to men. And so, just, the fact that most people don't really get to see, like, they don't live, I feel like a lot of people, with, especially the ones with lots of kids, it's like they didn't get to live much of an adult life in many cases. And that's why it is so strongly encouraged in the church to marry as young as humanly possible, as close to sexual maturation as humanly possible, because they don't want you to see what it's like to live for decades on end as an adult, and how that differs from being a child or even a teenager. Just being an adult is just so different. Even if everything else about your life were exactly the same, you would still change. And they don't want you to see that. They don't want you to see that it is possible, it is totally possible to get through a winter or a year without a cold. Like age 27 for me was the first time that happened. And I feel like too many women, like, let's say I would have gotten married long before I was 20. So let's say like my mom, like 22 or something, and I would have had a kid by 25. Well, I wouldn't have gotten to see that. I wouldn't have gotten to see what it was like to not have any colds whatsoever during a school year, and also an age in my life since I was born in the summer. And so, I would have had colds at 27. I'd have probably had them at age 30 and 33 and 34. And eventually I'd have probably had some years with zero, but not until I'd had, some more ridiculously high years, with kids going to school and or daycare. So yeah, it's like, colds are caused by germs or viruses. And so, it's like education is the best defense against, women having a whole bunch of kids too young. And that's why they want to discourage it in women. They don't want women to realize, just how much better they could be doing if they just didn't even have kids at all, ever, with anyone. They don't want you to see that you could, that ages like 27 and 30 and 33, in my case, could be very different, by not having kids. Like, you really can get through the year without a single cold. It doesn't have to be the common cold. I call it the not so common cold with me, because it still happens to me, but usually it's about a year or more by the time I get another one. So yeah, it's like, I just want to say that because, yeah, I mean, it really hasn't been all that long that people have even known that colds were viruses, and that children had so many more than adults. A lot of people just genuinely, since people didn't really discuss it a lot, they just genuinely all unanimously thought they'd gotten lucky. They just happened to be lucky as adults, is what a lot of people probably thought. And considering how, parents get so many of them, well, they just, they just all happen to think they probably even thought there were people getting more than they did. You know what I'm saying? They really it never people just don't really get to grow up fully without kids and see what it's truly like not to have any kids and just how much healthier you really can be, especially as a woman. You know, I mean, a man, could be healthier to an extent, but it is especially true of a woman. And I just would not want someone to look upon me and think that I'm weak. I mean, probably the worst life I could have ever imagined for myself was probably the life of some of my teachers that were also boy moms, meaning they had one or more kids that were boys and very little. They were always getting colds between their students, their kids in daycare. The fact that they were boys meant they had slightly more than girls. And just, just a horrible life. And so if you look at them, you don't really get a feel for how much less susceptible adults really are than children. You just look at them and you assume all adults are parents and that everybody is just getting at least 2 to 4 colds. Well, I'm here to tell you that it truly is possible. Like I haven't hit a year with 2 or more clinical colds since the year when I was 23. It's like every 3 years it looked like I would hit a milestone. I turned 18 and I never again had a year with 5 or more colds again. And I also, that was the first year that I remember not having at least 4. I turned 21 and never again would I have 4 or more colds. And that was the first year I didn't have 3. And then 3 years later, I turned 24. And at age 22, I had had my first year with just 1. And age 24, my second year with 1, but I didn't know it. But from there on out, it would just be 1 or less colds per year. Then 3 years later, I turned 27. First year was 0. 3 years later, I turned 30, and that was another year with 0. And both of them had a similar pattern in that it's like I had one so late in the spring. At age 26, it was like I had one in March, 26 years and 9 months. And then I didn't get one at 27 because it would have almost had to happen within that less than a year. And I was starting to go more than a year between them, like 12 to 18 months. And then the same thing happened with age 30 in that I had one at 29 years and 10 months, right before my 30th birthday. I had one in April. And so because I went a full 18 months later, before I got the first one in my 30s at age 31 in October, I didn't get one age 30. And then, let's see, got one November at age 32, but for some reason, I went almost 3 years without any clinical colds when I was 33 and 4, respectively. I had a subclinical one, I think it's September of 2017 or something like that. But other than that, age 33 and 34, it wasn't until age 35, almost 3 years after, that bad one at age 32 in November. So almost like 35 months later, got one. So yeah, I'm just glad I got to mature without any children. And I guess I'll go ahead and post this video.